Guys, we are live. We wanted to do another random evening chat, and tonight I have my friend Daniel Shaw joining us. Hey Daniel, tell everybody who you are, man.
Hey guys, I'm Daniel Shaw. I'm on YouTube in a few places, Funker Tactical and some other stuff. Retired Marine, travel around, teach folks how to fight with guns, law enforcement, little military, responsible armed citizens. Kind of who I cater to the most is those armed citizens. I run marketing. I'm the director of marketing for Gun Mag Warehouse. It's kind of my remote gig that I put a lot of time and effort into. So buy all your magazines at Gun Mag Warehouse. Ding.
All right.
I had to throw in a plug. Thanks, Tim. No, man, I'm happy to be on here. Not so happy about the circumstances, but It needs to be discussed, man.
Yeah, that's true. So, guys, what we're going to talk about tonight is the stuff that's transpired in the last 24, 48 hours. We ask that you guys keep the comments cool. Let's not get into name calling, cursing, all that stuff, because that just gets us all in trouble here on YouTube. It's not that we're trying to do that; it's that YouTube will actually nix the stream. So yeah, these are the worst videos for me to make, man. I don't enjoy the political videos, and I certainly don't enjoy having to talk about what's transpired here in the last 24 hours, 48 hours in the United States, and we're just going to go ahead and call them what they are. They're national tragedies, and this is one of those things that is going to bear heavily on the upcoming 2020 election. And it's a sad state of affairs. I want to start the video out by saying that my heart and prayers go out to the families and loved ones of those that are affected by these tragedies. And it's a shame that we have to go political, because it used to be there was some sense of decorum where if something like this happened, people wouldn't immediately jump in front of a camera and make political hay out of such events. But in today's world, the bodies are still warm when politicians are taking to the cameras and calling for whatever their political agenda is. Typically what affects us, obviously, given the nature of our channels, is firearms. And so immediately the conversation turns to the absolute destruction of the Second Amendment, the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and they pretty much have a playbook. And the minute something like this happens, they realize they only have hours to pounce to get their point home, and literally it's a playbook. And they reenact it over and over and over again, and it's no different this time, unfortunately. And so that's what we're going to talk about this evening. We will not mention the names of the shooters. They do not merit being discussed. If anything, I wish people would remember the names of those that lost their lives or were wounded. We do not need to make celebrities out of these people, and that's one of the biggest problems, Daniel, I see.
That is a big problem, man, for sure.
So I was watching the news before the Ohio tragedy about what transpired in Texas. And I was just watching out of curiosity to see if history repeats itself. And sure enough, and so I'm watching Fox News, which many people watching tonight will say, is more politically right-leaning, might be more pro-Second Amendment, whatever. I'm not a member of any political party, and I'm certainly no believer in any particular news outlet, including Fox News, but I was watching them primarily. I already knew what I could expect from CNN.
For sure.
And sure enough, man, they were canceling regular programming, looping the same 5 to 10 video clips over and over again, trotting out different experts, law enforcement people, military people, politicians, and just constantly asking them the same questions over and over and over again all day long. They were turning that killer into a celebrity. And Not 13 hours later, another lunatic does something similar. And while I know that the motives of these people are very complex, and we'll delve hopefully into some of that tonight, one of the things I very much believe is that the 24-hour news cycle, once that completes, then we get the books, then we get the documentaries, and this all really started to happen after Columbine. They turn these killers into celebrities, they make them infamous, and then other lunatics out there want their 15 minutes of fame, and so they go out and mimic what these past people have done. What are your thoughts, man?
There's a lot there.
Yeah.
We got to remember, and we're preaching to the choir here. Everybody probably watching this channel understands this, knows this well. The news cycle, it's all about dollar bills, man. That's it. It's all about, we got to sensationalize everything, get more views, get people talking about it, get those shares, get more hits on the website, get more advertising funds, get more everything, and be the top news source that's basically riding a wave of a tragedy. It happens every single time. It's disgusting to watch, but do it all the time. We saw this in terrorism. We're not seeing quite the amount of terrorism that we used to. Hopefully it doesn't start happening again, but we would see before, whenever we had a kind of a mix of terrorist acts and these active shooter type incidents, I would see on the news quickly that something happened at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or sometime in the evening. I'm like, okay, that's a deranged lunatic with a gun killing people, not so much a terrorist incident. They like to do them at different times of the day, so they make that news cycle. These people know what they're doing. They're in a lot of cases, they're planning this out so they can maximize the coverage, and not just on the terror side, but these people, I mean, you could lump them in, many of them, not all of them. Some of them are just crazy, man. And that's why, decide or figuring out what their motivation is going to be very difficult for any of us to pretty much ever do, unless it's politically motivated. And sometimes those are. And you were telling me before that we started this live stream that there may be some political motivation behind the Ohio shooter. I have not heard that, but that makes us fall under the definition of terrorism. Because if you're trying to gain traction, gain views, to put fear, to change somebody's mind, to change their ideology or whatever, promote your own ideology, that meets the definition of terrorism. And it's possible that could have been happening here. But regardless, man, when the news cycles do this, it's wildly irresponsible for them to do that.
I think.
But the politicians are going to do it too, Tim. Yes. They're going to do it Monday morning if they're not already on there. And theirs isn't about money anymore. Theirs is about votes and control. That's it. It's all they want is more votes to stay in office, and they want more control, more power. And that's the whole anti-gun movement to begin with.
I agree. And, one of the things that they do is they start the misinformation campaign, and then they hide painful facts that are quite relevant to the conversation. So let's take the case of the Ohio shooter. So I've been watching, trying to find as much information as I can about that person. We already know that the shooter in Texas was motivated by racial hatred. That seems to be the case. That's everything I can find. Of course, we have to rely on news sources for this stuff, but there's definitely a manifesto of sorts left behind. This person drove 10 hours to kill Hispanic people, and that obviously is absolutely appalling to anybody that is a thinking person and is of a liberty mind. I mean, there's absolutely no reason to do things like that.
Of course.
And that's what this guy did. So we think what his motivations were. So much so that the president of Mexico...
We think we know.
Well, right? We think we know, right? Yeah. Do we ever truly know?
In my experience, and anything that I'll say in this whole live stream, I have dove heavily into like every active shooter that's happened in the last 20 years in the United States. Me and Ryan Hoover developed a program to help on-scene responders. Is what the Hartford Consensus and Department of Homeland Security, American College of Surgeons says they're going to save the most lives is those on-scene responders, non-law enforcement, non-EMS, the people that are on-scene right there or who are responsible for saving lives in these incidents, and trying to figure out how to best give them the tools and knowledge to do that. But the problem is it doesn't. When I dive into this information later on, and what I do with law enforcement, I'm not a law enforcement officer. I usually get some pretty good access to stuff that most folks don't get access to. Like I've already got information from the Ohio shooter because I teach every year a conference up in Ohio and teach a lot of law. I got hundreds of law enforcement officer friends in Ohio, and I've got some pretty good information that's not in the news right now. It's not anything crazy. I mean, I'll share it here shortly, but it's the interesting thing is as the months go by and the real reports go by and everything else go by. Cheers. Are we cheersing?
No, people are asking what I'm drinking. It's non-alcoholic beer. It's made by Guinness. I don't drink, guys. I gave it up 10 years ago when my first son was born. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Daniel.
No, but man, what we think we know at the beginning is almost the opposite in a lot of cases of what happens at the end. So that may be the case, everything we think we know right now. But then again, I'm always prepared to change my mind and retract a statement.
Yeah, I think one of the things I found interesting about some of the stuff I know the guys over in Free Republic had pulled up, some of my friends have been sending me links pretty much all day, and it seems to be somewhat confirmed that the shooter in Ohio was self-proclaimed socialist and Antifa supporter. So here we have the Democrats, and please, if you're a Democrat watching this, know that I do not believe that all Democrats are anti-gun any more than I believe all Republicans are pro-gun. That's simply not true. And so one of the reasons why I don't say I'm a Republican is because they're just as guilty as the Democrats about lying, misleading, and doing anything they have to get a vote.
Without a doubt.
And they've both screwed us over equally. Matter of fact, in my lifetime, more anti-gun laws have been passed under Republican presidencies, mostly because gun owners are asleep thinking Republicans will protect them. It's not for lack of trying on the Democrats' part, but both parties are equally out to screw us over. So I am a libertarian, and I only vote as a Republican when I have to because, we have a binary choice. So if you're a Democrat watching this, please don't think that I'm anti-Democrat or I think that all Democrats are socialists. I know that's nothing could be further from the truth. But, the Democratic Party candidates out there, the 2020 candidates that are currently running, are going to run with this. And they're already out there. O'Rourke and others are out there attaching the actions of this shooter in Ohio to Trump. And believe me, I'm not the biggest Trump fan. They're out there attaching all this stuff to Trump, saying Trump's responsible. His rhetoric is responsible. Really? Because when I watch CNN, and I watch CNN just as much as I watch MSNBC and Fox News, it seems to me that the mainstream media, once again, is the one out there beating the drums of hatred, calling other people racist, saying this stuff, and getting people agitated. Yeah, Trump says some pretty inflammatory things, as do many politicians, perhaps he more so than others, but you can't assign this all to Trump. And especially when you have the mainstream media pushing the narrative that all Republicans or anybody that supports Trump is a white nationalist and a racist, a misogynist, a homophobe, a xenophobe, and they do that endlessly. But here we have a shooter that this isn't the first time that is Antifa and self-identifying as leftist, democratic, socialist. And this comes about because they still haven't pulled his Twitter feed, and people have pulled pictures of him. I'll pop this up here really quick. Let me pull it over. What's it doing? But I'll pop this up here really quick, I think. Oh, it's tiny. But this is right off this guy's Twitter feed, and I can't get the image to center for whatever reason. So we'll just have to go with small. But anyway, that's right off that dude's Twitter feed, and that's him. And so I was scrolling through his Twitter comments, and, first of all, something once again happens. These guys, this guy as well as others, have gone out there on the various discussion forums, the Chan boards and things like that, and posted their intentions. They pretty much telegraphed what they were about to do. And once again, it was missed. And that kind of is going to segue into something that I found out Representative Crenshaw is supporting, which is just disheartening to me. And that's red flag laws. We'll
me too, man.
But I want to get your thoughts on what I just was talking about before I hate dominating the discussion, man. I'll run my mouth forever.
Nah, that's what you do, man. You're good at it. That's why they're all here to see you. They're not here to hear me talk. They're here to hear you talk.
I want to hear you talk, man. But anyway, so let's hold on. I got to take out some folks that are not abiding by the rules.
I'll occupy some time while you're doing that. No, I think you're right. Looking at what's happening from everything from restaurants and just what happens in restaurants, people wearing a MAGA hat. There has been a call to arms by I don't think it's the majority of the left. I think it's like kind of a fringe group in the left. There's been almost a call to arms to go against everything related to Trump, and I think there's strongly inciting violence in a lot of ways. I mean, we saw the same thing with the shooting of the representatives on the baseball field. It's like there's tons of stuff out there that's happening, and then. It's okay, but then they'll point the finger at Trump at the same time. It's kind of and I'm like you, I've not been a huge Trump fan, and I am I am not bashful. I am completely open about my libertarianism, so it's all good.
Yeah, I am too. I want to get back to this misinformation that's going on. So here I have I don't know why everything's showing up so tiny here and not centered. It's kind of annoying. I think I know why. Bam. That should do it. There we go. So this is what I caught on Fox News. Check this out. More misinformation. This is coming from Fox. Shooter was wearing body armor and had a high-capacity gun with magazines. Once again, we have these talking heads out there that are spreading misinformation, and that is worded in such a way to elicit a particular political response.
For
right?
sure.
Already we have Trump out there saying on Monday he's going to make a statement and he's going to look into this gun thing. Right? So we already know what he did with bump stocks, and he's wearing that as a badge of honor. He's already made threats while he was abroad on the Piers Morgan show, talking about how he was opposed to suppressor ownership, and now he thinks we need to do something more about firearms and this notion of gun violence, as if guns are capable of anything other than laying there. They have no intent. They are incapable of violence. That's like saying, hammer violence or car violence. It's
out of all these, so I took a journalism class. I took a few of them actually when I was going to school at University of Miami on writing stories, writing leads, writing all these things, and they have these short amount of space that they have to put words in. Very short amount, and they want to use the right words and make it perfect and make it say the most with the least amount of words. For a news agency, the writer and then the producer and the editors to go back and forth and land on this is what we're publishing, the one that uses up all these words to focus on the gun and the magazine, that is to drive a narrative, nothing else. You cannot be confused you can't confuse that with anything else. That's the sole purpose, is to sensationalize, to drive a narrative and focus it on the firearm itself and to build some evidence for attacking that. There's no other reason for that whatsoever. It doesn't make any sense.
Oh, I agree. And here's one of the other things that I want to segue into before I forget. So, I just showed an image there quickly to my audience that Trump is, gonna do something here, and he'll make a speech on Monday. We can only find out, what he's going to say then. But
what do you think he's going to say?
Well, he's gonna do the typical politician thing. So I have to be careful what I say here, because I have friends that are fairly close to the Trump administration that have told me things, and I think we all know that Don Jr., for example, is very pro-gun.
Yep.
I also know that Ivanka and Jared Kushner are staunchly anti-gun. So Trump has, his children in his ear. Ivanka, is going to be talking to him about being anti-gun, and Jared Kushner, obviously he respects their opinions. And then you have Don Jr. out there who, obviously shows up and goes to places like SHOT Show and posts pictures of himself out hunting and shooting. Obviously a Second Amendment supporter, probably more so than his father. I believe his father is more or less the typical politician, lifelong New York Democrat. If you go back to his history, he's made anti-gun comments in books that he's written.
Yep.
He pretty much did a complete 180 on just about every political belief that he has based upon.
You may have summed it up with typical politician.
A typical politician, right?
You're
So he wanted to be a conservative so he could run as such, because he wasn't going to be welcomed by the Democratic Party. So he became a Republican president. But let's face the facts. He's not pro-gun in any way whatsoever. He seeks out the support of the NRA. He's spoken, every year at their national convention. He promised the 8-year assault on our Second Amendment rights ended with his presidency, and obviously nothing could be further from the truth. So what we're going to see, I believe, is he's going to unfortunately have the NRA in his ear. They Chris Cox, before he was forced out, made a YouTube video, and you can find it very easily on YouTube, where he is advocating for red flag laws. Now, what is a red flag law? The short and to the point explanation of it would be it's a way around, it's an end run around due process. So globally, the UN and the United States have this thing called the presumption of innocence, but it's considered by the UN to be a basic human right. In the United States, we have what's called due process. You can't be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process. What is due process? Due process means you go to a court, you face your accuser, and you have your day in court. If an allegation is made against you, it's not done so in private, and it's done quite publicly. You're aware of the accusation, and you face your accuser. What a red flag law does is it allows a star chamber court, a judge sitting in secrecy, somebody, an ex-wife or a wife or an estranged lover, a co-worker, a family member that may have a grudge. I mean, we all know that protection orders are never misused in this country, right?
Not at all.
So they can go to the Star Chamber judge, make their case that you're crazy, you should not be trusted with firearms, a warrant is written, and your house is raided, your property is taken from you, and now you are guilty of something until you prove to the court you are innocent. So now you're guilty until proven innocent, and the burden of proof is on you, and you have to retain legal services. It's going to cost you very real money, and it's, you don't know how it's going to play out or end. It's already gotten at least one person killed. It was misused. The police went to this person's house. They entered forcibly. He didn't know what was happening. He had no idea that this Star Chamber court had taken place, or that a warrant had been issued to take his firearms from him. He got into a gunfight with police and died. And that's the danger of these things.
You could be the most anti-gun person ever. Like, you hate guns. Like, you want them banned. A full scope ban. And you should still be against the red flag law. The precedent. It's wildly irresponsible, Orwellian concept. Like, this would be one of the most, for lack of a better term, like raping of freedoms and liberty that you could think of to have done. Like, it was such a dangerous concept.
I agree, and this is really sad. So I'm going to bring up an image here of a guy that I've had great respect for. I'm sorry, guys, you're seeing also the chat scrolling by as I try to keep track of what folks are doing.
They are typing like crazy.
They are. And if you guys have a question, we're going to keep an eye out for super chats, and they do just directly support us here at the Military Arms Channel. But things are popping by so fast, I just realized there were a few in there. I'll try to go back and catch them. But this is Congressman Crenshaw, and he's a Navy SEAL, retired, and obviously a combat vet, and I've had great respect for him. I mean, I watch him on Instagram, I follow his videos. I know that you follow him because I see you liking his comments, but he has recently backed, as I think it was May 17th or something like that, he backed the red flag law called TAPS, the TAPS Act. And as you can see from what I'm showing on my screen right now, you have him along with other Republicans and 2 Democrats backing this TAPS Act, which is in essence the red flag law. And it's like everybody is so desperate to do something that they're going to back something that you would think that Crenshaw would know better. You would think that he would actually stand up for the Constitution and Bill of Rights, because I follow the man and he's so spot on in just about everything else he talks about. But even he is being pulled into this narrative, and I don't know what to do about it. I mean, I've called him out, as have others.
His post today too was very strangely written. I don't have it pulled up right now, so I can't quote him exactly, but he was talking about how, like, one of the worst of evils is killing somebody because of their race.
Absolutely.
Now, on the surface, I can totally agree with that. Sure, like one race killing another because of their race, like, absolutely insane. Like that is I fought against that evil, right? Like and lost friends against that evil. I know that evil. I've seen it. But at the same time, like, the way this is worded, this is trying to pandering to that same crowd a little bit. Like, if you're doing violence against somebody else for any reason other than self-defense, and it's justifiable and it needs to be done, and this is your only option, there is no. If the guy in Ohio killed folks because he just wanted to see blood or just get a higher body count than one of the last shooters out there, and this other guy killed, both of those both of those deaths are the same level of tragic. Like, there is no higher level of evil here. They're both disgusting, horrible people that should not be on this planet. Their life should be ended.
I think if people follow me, they know how I feel about racism in general. I think it's probably one of the most ignorant things ever, to think that you're somehow better than somebody else simply based upon what region of the globe they come from, or the color of their skin, hair, eyes, whatever, is so.
Dude, I tell people to read Carl Sagan. Like, and realize how small and insignificant we are. Like, I am a worthless nobody who gets to live in this little speck of time on this little speck in the universe, like I'm worthless, insignificant. And to think that I'm better than somebody, some other insignificant person, is just an incredible level of arrogance.
It is. And look at what Iraq Vet just posted on his Facebook. I can't check out Iraq Veterans Facebook page right now, guys. I'm trying to catch up with Super Chats. Thank you for supporting us here at the channel. We're obviously very politically active. We're constantly working with congressmen, senators. The gun owners of America work with us a lot, and as we go into the 2020 election cycle, we're working as much as we can behind the scenes. Turns out that Sebastian Gorka is a fan of the channel. We've built a friendship. I was just recently on his show. Hopefully, through him, we can help the cause. That being the Second Amendment. He's very, very pro-gun. And matter of fact, it was kind of crazy to find out that he goes back. He loves my videos where I talk about 80s guns because we're roughly the same age, and he loves the 80s hip-firing stuff. But anyway.
Viet Pho has a pretty good point, man. Like we talked about some stuff. What about all the shootings in Chicago, right, that are happening to minorities and everything else? Like this stuff does not make the news for anything.
No, it never does
it's not where the money's at, man. No, it's not it,
and that's not where the votes are at. Right? The people, the Democratic Socialists, the anti-gunners, which unfortunately are the Democratic presidential candidates right now. They don't want to point that out because that's where you have basically one-party rule. In all the deadliest cities in America, you have basically one-party rule, and that party is the Democratic Party. And again, I'm not picking on Democrats. I'm just pointing out the facts. And there are plenty of good Democrats out there that don't subscribe to this, that are pro-gun. It's only recently that the Democratic Party's made this radical shift to the left where they're openly saying that they're socialists. And it's with that socialism. If you take a look at socialism, the Nazi Party were socialists. When Hitler took control, it was that he added socialism to the National Socialist Workers' Party. That is a fact that's been twisted in historical accuracy, and you'll find that many times these socialist movements globally, socialist, communist, one being very closely related to the other, are always violent. Antifa, supposedly anti-fascist, are employing brown shirt tactics. They beat people down and try to silence those with whom they disagree. That's what socialism brings. And we have people openly running as socialists now. And
that happens at the same time in a nonviolent form on social media every day. You've been a victim, right? Like you're being silenced, not violently, but they do the same thing. They're silencing you on all forms of media.
Exactly.
On Google, on everything.
What Google and what Twitter and what Instagram is doing to those of us in the Second Amendment community, to the conservative speech folks, by silencing them, deplatforming them, is the modern day equivalent of book burning. If you don't agree with somebody,
I think it's the most dangerous thing that our democracy has ever encountered. Like the fact that when an election comes up, there are people who do not share your views and have no problem silencing every view but their own. They control what you find in a Google search term. They control what you see in your Facebook feed that everybody's checking 20 times a day. They control what's allowed on YouTube, on the video and the content that you consume. They control what's in the films and the movies and the TV shows that you watch. They control all that. This
Absolutely.
is a scary, scary thing to have that much control.
It is. So what we got, guys, going into the 2020 election, we have to be aware of what's happening here. Now, I know I've seen a lot of comments of people saying that all these events are red flag events, and I don't agree with that. I don't think that this is a government.
Are we talking false flag event?
False flag. I said red flag.
I don't agree with it either.
Yeah, false flag event. I don't believe that is the case in these events. I don't know where you stand on that, Daniel, but I don't think everything is a conspiracy. I think that what's motivating these people is definitely attached to a political ideology, but I don't think it's our government going out and doping these people up purposely and then sending them out on a mission for political gain. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but I don't think these are false flag events. I think these are lone actors that are doing this type of stuff, and the question is how do we deal with it?
Look, I spend a large part of my life working for the government, and man, we are not that good at keeping secrets. That's one of them. Everybody always says that. I know that's just one of the arguments. I would not discount anything because I know the crazy world that we live in, and I know the level of craziness and evil that's out there, and I know the level of sociopaths and psychopaths that are out there that all they care about control. So I would not discount any possibility of anything on planet Earth. That being said, I have not seen an event, an active shooter, that I thought there was even remotely a reasonable amount of evidence to say that it was a false flag event.
Yeah, I'm not going to totally discount it. I mean, I don't know, but like you said, I didn't work for the government for nearly as long as you did, but I know that we worked in similar fields, just a generation or two apart. I guarded nuclear weapons during the Cold War, and I can tell you right now, I agree with you that our government is incapable of keeping big secrets, especially when you have a bunch of people involved. Things leak out. And I just don't see, like the guys that think, and I don't want to get too far off into the weeds here, but, like 9/11.
We also have too many good people. We have way too many good people, man, out there in government, in the military, in intelligence agencies. We have too many good people that would be whistleblowers, man. Like we have, we talk about all the negative and all the evil and all the bad, and there's tons of that out there. Man, we got a lot of good folks, man, that would never even consider enforcing a law to come take your firearm. That would fight. They'd never even met you, but they would lay their life down for you. Like we have a lot of those, and I just can't imagine this happening.
And we have people of affiliations to both major parties in the military that are very good people that would never, if given the order to go in and shoot American citizens based on political stuff or whatever, they would simply not show up to work that day. If anything, they would take their weapons home and take part of the resistance.
Right.
So, I don't know. Anyway, one of the things that popped up, and this is something that we, I try to avoid, but it's something that we can't avoid the discussion of, and it's a super chat. How bad will the bloodshed be if they try to go door to door and collect guns? I don't think it ends well for the ATF law enforcement. Well, look, guys, the last thing, and I've said this many, many times, that we want is another civil war. That means you're at war with your neighbor. And I'm sure everybody thinks that they're going to, be on top. They're the top dog, and they're going to, not lose a family member, a child. They're not going to have their house burned. But the reality is, civil wars are extremely ugly. We've seen that time and time again. And the last thing we want is a civil war here in the United States. I don't want to get into a gunfight with my fellow Americans over political differences. We
don't have a geographic separation. We don't have borders and boundaries of ideologies. We didn't totally back in the late 1800s when our American Civil War happened, but we did in a large way. We had different boundaries where largely the southeast was of a certain ideology, and then the north and then the west was like kind of undecided, trying to figure it out. Now it's like there's no boundaries. It's with the cities within areas. Your neighbor is exactly what you're talking about. It's not your friend up north. It's the person who lives next to you, maybe on the opposite side. There's absolutely no reason for that. And there's also a big call to arms by a small group that I strongly disagree with of the firearms industry. And I think it is a very small group. Every time something happens, it's time to get busy and like we got to start thinking about we might have to fight. I think every day you wake up, you should be thinking about you might have to fight that day. That's just what I live in the world where I help people to survive deadly force encounters. And I don't know when my fight's coming again, but it's coming again one day. I don't know who my bad guy's going to be. I have no idea, but I try to be ready for that. But the idea of wanting to fight, and I think there is a very small fringe group out there that really scares the crap out of me, man, because how far we've thought into that. It gets pretty nasty really quick, and it's a pretty scary thing.
It is, but then we also have to accept the fact that I think all of us have that line in the sand that if it's crossed, something has to be done. Our founding fathers entrusted us, we the people, with the ultimate power of government. That's why the Second Amendment is so important. It's not about hunting. It's not about anything other than protecting ourselves and our nation from enemies, both foreign and domestic. That means if our government turns...
I agree, totally.
So there is that line in the sand, and I don't want that line crossed. I'm not going to go out there and make videos and say, if this happens right now, I'm going to tell everybody to meet me at this point.
That's the line. Yeah.
Right? So if that line gets crossed, believe me, guys, you'll know where I stand.
Our founders also set a really good example for us. Like the Revolutionary War. It wasn't like one day we have just had enough. They spent years lobbying and going and trying to negotiate and doing their best to have a peaceful resolution and become a free state before they said, all right, that's it. We are done, and it's time to fight. And when I talk to somebody who's just strongly like, oh man, I can't have this anymore. That this is going on and that, like it's getting close to time to start doing our thing, you know, and fighting and filling our magazines and all that good stuff. And they haven't knocked on the representative's door every single day. They haven't sent them an email, sent them a letter every single day. You are not following the founder's example that you cite all the time.
Right.
Because that was their example.
Right. They gave us the Second Amendment. Using the Second Amendment for its intended purpose is the last ditch thing. That is not to be used every time we have a disagreement with our politicians. And
I like you said the intended purpose. Man, because that is the intended purpose. Yes. I changed something. Somebody tried to write an article for our blog and had the word modern sporting rifle in the blog post today. And I was like, hey, new rule. Nobody is ever going to use modern sporting rifle on the Gun Mag Warehouse blog, because I despise the idea that the Second Amendment is for anything but what it's really for. Exactly. Like it's not an affirmation to do sports. It is my right to keep and bear arms. It gets everything from terrorism to tyranny. This is why the Second Amendment exists, not so I can go play a game.
Right. One of the guys did a super chat. I just took it down. They wanted to know, who do we vote for? Guys, I don't want to tell you who to vote for. You have to vote your conscience. But the unfortunate reality of the American political system is that we have a binary choice. Yes, we can go out and vote for a third party. I truly wish that we had alternatives to the Democrat and Republican parties. I really, truly do. But the unfortunate reality is we're forced into a binary decision where we have to vote for the lesser of two evils. Never have I found a candidate in my entire life that I was just like, man, this is the best possible candidate. This is the person we need as president, that was actually running for president. That person was never a choice. And so right. You have to vote your conscience. Now, me, last time I voted for Trump, I had to. And they'll probably be the case again here. I mean, it's the devil we know. I would like to be an ideologue and say that, I'm going to hold out for the libertarian candidate. But the reality is, that person, the closest I ever saw a third party coming to winning an election was when Ross Perot ran. I voted for him, and he got 19% of the vote, and all that did was put President Clinton in office. So, I can't tell you who to vote for, guys. You have to make that decision on your own. I'll make my intentions clear as we, get nearer to the 2020 election cycle. But all reality, I'll have no choice but to vote for Trump, just to keep one of these other 20 lunatics that's openly running as a socialist out of the White House.
Whatever you do, Tim, don't open the can of worms about you must vote libertarian because it's not wasting your vote, or going the other route and saying you are wasting your vote. Like, man, that can of worms.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And this super chat is absolutely correct. People need to write your representatives and blow up their phones and let them hear your voice. It does make a difference. It really does. And
talk to them. You've talked to representatives. I've talked to some representatives. Like, it matters to them.
After the whole Vegas tragedy, I actually had the Florida congressman call me. I forget his name now. His office called me because the videos we were making was blowing their phone lines up, and he wanted to talk to me. And I said, absolutely not. I don't want to talk to a traitor. I was mad at that dude. He was a Republican, and he's no longer in office. Surprise, surprise. He lost. Yes, it makes a difference, people. Write, email, and phone calls. Phone calls blow up the switchboards, and they can't ignore them. So send your email, but follow up with a phone call and let them know. There's an intern there that checks a box as to what you're saying. Keep it short, sweet, to the point, and don't be offensive. Don't use curse words.
Yes.
Don't sit there and keep them on the phone for an hour, or write 15 paragraphs in an email. Short, sweet, to the point. And that's truly how we can make a difference, and it does make a difference.
I don't know where you stand on this, but in my opinion, the big blanket, sign this thing right now, and make sure you look at this ad while you're signing it, is not as powerful as your personal phone call, your written letter by hand, your own email. It's clear and concise and tactful. Like, do them, sure, but there's a lot more that we can be doing.
Yep, I agree. We absolutely can be doing far more. And so...
Let's face it, you can't rely on the NRA to do it, right?
No, the NRA is totally broken, and it couldn't be at a worse time. The NRA is completely enveloped in their own corruption scandal. Wayne LaPierre is not going to go anywhere. His underling Josh, Chris Cox is now gone, but Wayne's going to hold on to power. He's going to kick everybody out. We've had, I still have NRA members telling me that I'm dividing the gun community and all this other stuff when I'm calling for the repair to fix the NRA. I'm not saying burn it to the ground.
The NRA's guilty of that, Tim, not you.
What's that? I know, right?
The NRA's guilty of that, not you.
No, they are guilty of it. And
right.
All I'm saying is trying to bring attention to it because we need them in the fight. Right now, they're out there calling for red flag laws. They back the bump stock ban. They are not helping us. And their horde corruption is not helping us. That's frontline news right now.
Right.
We need to fix them and get them back into the fight. I'm not saying burn it to the ground. What I'm saying is
they've given our entire community a black eye.
It is.
The entire community.
It absolutely is. Trying to keep up with all the chats.
That's what makes this so dangerous and all this going on. There's a perfect storm kind of brewing right here. Like this is going to be a fight. This is going to be scary for the Second Amendment. What's coming in the next few weeks and months, the rest of the year to election.
So this is one thing I thought was interesting. So going back to the Texas tragedy, the president of Mexico is now going to bring a suit against the United States because of the actions of the killer. Because I think there were 6 Mexican citizens. So I think that I think it's Juarez that's really close, the Mexico town that's really close to El Paso, and throughout the regular day you have people crossing over from Mexico to shop in the United States, and they go home, and unfortunately I believe 6 Mexican nationals were killed in that event, and so now you have the threat of legal action, however that works.
Did they file suit when Brian Terry was killed? When in the Fast and the Furious gun running scandal, and we were working with them and running up, did that happen then?
No. And here's the other thing. I know this because I actually love Mexico. I love Mexico. Believe it or not, is a big part of the United States and how our culture and the Old West and all that stuff that people think about. Mexico plays a very big role in that. And so I love going down to Mexico. And matter of fact, my wife and I honeymooned in Mexico. And it's just unfortunate that we have this, we're at odds with them right now. But what's 2 things, first of all, what Trump has done in terms of deportations and things like that, the left is once again being extremely hypocritical because Obama deported far more people than Trump has to date. And yet they didn't call out, well, they did, I guess, in the last presidential debate. They actually called out Biden for that. But it seems so hypocritical because when the Democrats are in office, they want to, strengthen border security. But when a Republican's in office, they want to completely do away with borders altogether.
Dude, it's all control. You know this. It's all about control and getting more votes. And let's get them on our team.
It is. And it is. It's buying votes and at the expense of our national security. And it's just it's unfortunate that type of stuff has to go down, but it does.
And you say at the expense of our national security, and I 100% totally agree with that. But a government's number one duty, their number one reason for existence, is to protect its people. Like that is the pinnacle of what their duties are, what they're supposed to be doing. And in order to stay in power, stay in control, and keep spending money on special interest and everything else, and all the stuff of making a super small groups of people that are on the fringe of even the wildest social or what is it, sociology, ideologies and everything, making them happy just for some virtue signaling and social justice warriorism, I guess you could say. It's insane what they're willing to sacrifice. It's scary.
Absolutely. And then one other point I wanted to make it about was Mexico is, the time that I've spent down there. What people in the United States don't understand, especially those.
Tim, I'm sorry to interrupt you. What is with the water dripping? Like 10 guys have been asking over here.
Oh, how do I mute that? It's the chat bubbles.
Oh, okay.
I don't even know how to.
Because now I'm like, what's going on?
I wish I could mute that audio. I really do. Let's see if I.
Sorry to interrupt you, but it was super important to know
Let's see if that helps a little bit. I turned down my volume a little bit. But anyway, so one of the things that I found interesting while I was in Mexico is that as an American citizen, if I went there and got a job, I would immediately be thrown in jail. They very much enforce their borders and their job markets. They do not allow foreigners to come in and just get jobs in Mexico, and they strictly enforce that. So if I went down there and I went, I was getting paid under the table to work at one of the resorts down there, and the Mexican government found out, I would be thrown in jail. But yet, here in the United States, we're expected to just open our borders and just let everybody come in, not through a port of entry, and do things as so many immigrants have done before. My own family, were immigrants from Holland. Totally disregard that process. Just come on over and get a job with no threat of being, jailed for it, or even really being sent back to whatever country you came from because you entered illegally. But Americans, for some reason, some think that it's just okay, man. Just let everybody come in, take all the jobs they want. Let's get them free medical. Let's get them free everything, and let's.
I think
let's
that's a very loud
borders.
minority.
Let's just pretend like borders don't exist, and I don't understand that mindset.
Yep. But I think that's a very loud minority that is all for that. Look, I'm not an economist. Like I don't like doing any kind of math really, but it just doesn't add up. Like it doesn't add up. We cannot support them. We cannot. There's not enough money coming in for this to work. This whole thing to work. I love the idea, man. Dude, my family migrated to the United States at some point, and I am 100% for diversity, migration. Like let's get good people in here, and let's get the freaking American dream back. And not the American dream has become how to do nothing and get paid to do it, which is counterproductive to the lifestyles of the rest of the Americans. Very dangerous.
Yeah, I think that you're right there. I want to kind of steer things back into the discussion.
Yeah, how do we get over here?
Oh, I don't know what happens, man. This is what happens. I was just thinking about what Neil Tyson had said, the scientist.
He said the same thing that we've been saying for many years.
Right.
Except he's not one of us.
He is not one of us.
He carries a lot more weight because of that.
He's not, an ardent Second Amendment advocate. But here's what he posted today on Twitter, and he's caught a lot of flack from some folks, certainly not from our community. But he brought up some interesting information, statistics, just facts. Now, he's not even saying that he's pro-gun or anti-gun. He just pointed out something that he thought was important. Here's a scientific mind. And what Neil said was, on average, across any 48 hours, we also lose, talking about here in the United States, 500 people to medical errors, 300 to the flu, 250 to suicide, 200 to car accidents, and 40 to homicide via handgun. So there you have perhaps even an anti-gun statement. Again, he's just posting the facts. And then oftentimes our emotions respond more to spectacle than to data, which is absolutely a true statement. He's catching flack for saying that. But, one thing that the media has absolutely convinced Americans of is that they're under imminent danger, imminent threat of being killed by gun violence. Like a group of guns are driving around in a white van waiting to jump out and pounce and kill people. And the reality is you're far less likely to die by gunfire than you are to be killed by medical malpractice or reading a text message while you're driving. But yet they sensationalize this, and they continue to push to basically destroy our Constitution and Bill of Rights. I've used this example before. You take Corvette. You have the new C8 Corvette coming out. You have the Dodge Demon, 200-mile-an-hour capable vehicles. The horsepower wars are on again. If somebody jumps into a brand new ZR1 Corvette, buys a bottle of Jack Daniels, and goes speeding down the highway and careens into a van, killing an entire family, do we say Chevy needs to stop making the ZR1? Do we say, Jack Daniels needs to stop making whiskey? Do we hold anybody else accountable other than the driver? Do we say, look what that person did? And that person gets their face in the local newspaper, and they talk about what that person did. There's no calls for prohibition on alcohol again. There's no calls for the banning of cars that are capable of exceeding the speed limit 4 or 5 times over. We always attribute the actions to the person in that case. However, when somebody goes out and does something unspeakable and uses a firearm, all of a sudden it's a gun problem. And what the reality is you're more likely to be killed by a vehicle or somebody using a vehicle improperly than you are to die by somebody being killed or die by somebody misusing a firearm. So again, it's just this political narrative that's being driven by the mainstream media on both sides, even unintentionally in some cases. It's a narrative that's being driven by the news, endless news cycle, and politicians that guns are bad, and if you step outside your house, if we don't do something to ban AR-15s, AKs, 30-round magazines, whatever they come up with, then you're going to die, so vote for me.
You also have to blatantly ignore the lives that are saved from firearms, and there's a lot of those. I used to do this fairly often. I haven't done it in a long time, but I challenge anybody out there watching. Look at how many gun deaths there are a year. You could subtract suicides, or you can keep them in there. You can subtract drug deals like criminal on criminal, or you can keep them in there. Doesn't matter, whatever. And then look at the Center for Disease Control stats that are published. They're usually 2 years behind, and then the CDC stats come out on how people died.
Yep.
It's like shopping cart deaths are a bad thing, right? Swimming pools, private swimming pools are incredibly dangerous, right? There's so many things. Now, I'm not saying that we don't have some kind of problem here in the United States. Like there's a mental health problem. There's a lot of things, right? And I'm not here to figure out all those things. I deal on the immediate incident and immediate post incident. That's where my world is. I have a son who has some mental issues, and I have went through the mental the minefield and the maze that it is our mental health system. We are not prepared. Our country does not deal well with people with mental health issues.
No, pretty much
we have no idea what we're doing. We ignore them, and you can't afford to get what the doctors recommend because insurance doesn't cover it either. So, at the end of the whole story, it goes right back to what I said at the very beginning of the show. This is all about control. That's why it's sensationalized, right? Now, if you go a little step further, though, you're probably familiar with Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. I really like Dave. Good. Talked to him many times. Been on my podcast. I consider David Grossman a friend. There's people that argue against a lot of the things that he's put in some of his books, but in one of, or actually in multiple of them, he talks about some studies that are about psychological effects of human violence. And basically a lot of these studies indicate that human violence is the pinnacle. It is the top of mental trauma. It hurts us the most mentally. When another human is trying to kill you or another human wants to kill you, there is nothing that creates post-traumatic stress more than human violence. A car accident where it's an accident is one thing. Now, you could get PTS from that, but then there's when another human is trying to kill you or you've witnessed the human violence is in a new category all by itself when it comes to psychological trauma. And that could be a non-sinister way of explaining why it's sensationalized so much, because this deeply wounds us.
Yeah, I would agree. And on the issue of mental health, there's a lot of folks out there that believe, and I'm not a doctor, so I can't really comment on it, but they would say that a lot of the violence that transpires with a lot of these shooters, if you dig into their history, they were prescribed various mind-altering drugs for depression or things like that kind of blame the pharmaceutical industry. Now, I don't know how, again, I'm not a doctor. I don't know how that plays out. I mean, I know that
we have an epidemic or a pandemic of pill addiction in this country too.
To what kind of pills?
Narcotics, opioids.
Yeah. But I mean, let's be realistic. That's been around as long as narcotics have been around. I mean, it's like saying we have an alcohol problem in this country. Sure, I can't say that people that are pill popping or drinking are the problem, because that's been going on since the beginning of time. There was a time when Coca-Cola actually had cocaine in it, and it was just sold. Actually, it was prescribed as medicine, and then it became a soft drink. But
what's the meme say? You got demons in your blood. You should do opium about it. Right?
But. Yeah, man, I think that there has to be a bigger discussion. I think one of the things that having traveled to other countries, one of the things that sets America apart isn't just, our Second Amendment and, things like that. It's a culture. And, I'll be the first to say that we do have a culture of violence in this country, and that our pop culture teaches our youth that the cool thing to do to resolve issues is to hurt somebody else. That many times will make, celebrities or idols out of, criminals and things like that. I mean, that's been going on in pop culture forever. And I would say that has some effect on the behavior of young people. but I can't say that that's just it, though. You know what I mean? There's more at play here, and I think it's a more complex problem. And saying something simple like take all the medication away from people that are on it that might cause these outbursts of violence. Let's just take those pills away and stop prescribing them to people. I don't think that's necessarily a fix. I don't think going out there saying let's just take all guns away, that's going to stop it. The problem's more complex than that. When politicians go out there and say, we need to ban magazines, we need to ban AR-15s, we need to ban this stuff. Well, just take a look at any other country in the world. Some of the countries where they have banned such things, and yet their violence is still through the roof. They still have, people breaking into homes and, stabbing people, beating people to death.
Or even worse, their violence is done by their governments.
Or by their government,
which
exactly.
is not uncommon in
No.
2019. That we like to pretend like, oh, that would never happen here. Like, every country it's happened to said that.
Oh, boy, here we go. So one super chat just said, I'll have to follow up on the news. This just gets worse and worse. So Ohio PD released AR pistol, brace, and 100-round drum. So
I was going to bring that up.
Pistol, we have a brace, which has been under the microscope before, and a drum magazine. So it's checking all the boxes for the politicians to call for banning drums, banning braces, and banning ARs. So it checked all the boxes. If that's
what
true.
I had gotten that earlier from some of my sources. I also got that officers responded with a combo of M4, Glock, and shotguns. 6 officers engaged him within 24 seconds of his first shots. Crowded environment, channelized, and was running a drum magazine in an AR.
And see, that's going to be used for political hay. It's almost as if this person chose that type of setup for that reason. And again, this is a person that self-identified as a socialist, Antifa, what many would consider to be far left on the political spectrum, and yet the media, are assigning this to Trump, Republicans, and conservatives, and the narrative is going to be set pretty much for the 2020 election, and it's just I'm not, like I said earlier in the stream, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but sometimes some of these things are just so surreal in how they go down, when they go down, how they go down, and what's being used, that it almost seems by design. I'm not going to say it is. It's just, man, you can't help but having your mind go that direction. Is there anything else that you can talk about that you may have picked up from your contacts?
That's really about it. They don't know really. Well, there is. I've heard speculation. I'm not totally. This isn't from that same source. That the brands associated with the products that he was using were not what you would or associate with quality. So what that tells me, based on what you were just saying a second ago, with the argument that they'll try to pose that he was strategically selecting these items for this fight and it made him more deadly. I think if you really know what you're talking about in terms of firearms and everything else, but that's not who's going to be digesting this information. That's easily destroyed. That argument is, but the masses aren't going to realize that this guy did not know what he was doing in selecting things other than the basics of, I want to shoot a lot of rounds, I want a higher capacity magazine, and I want to wear body armor. Yeah. But even still, he went down in 24 seconds.
Here's one thing that I noticed, because one of the first things that was reported was how quickly police responded in less than a minute and took him out. But in that time span, he did quite a bit of damage. And politicians are going to grab a hold of that, and they're going to say, this is why we don't need these weapons of war in the hands of the American people. They can't be trusted with them. Look at the carnage he caused in such a short amount of time. That's the first thing I thought of when they said they took him out in less than a minute. And I heard how many people were killed and injured. One person posted, it wasn't a super chat, but this caught my eye. Mac, well, it was nice while it lasted. Man, don't be defeatist like that. Guys, this is when we have to stand up and fight for our rights. We've been here before when President Obama was in office. We faced the exact same threat to our rights, and we prevailed. How do we prevail? We organized in social media. We showed up at darn near every capital of every state in this great nation, and we made our voices heard. and we sent a loud and clear message. If you do this, you're not going to have a job next time around when the elections roll around. And we can't be defeatist. We can't just say, oh, well, it was nice knowing you. It was great while it lasted, guys. We can't be defeatists. We have to be motivated to stand up and fight and not take this lying down. We cannot accept this. And, we have to get out. But that's, again, we're battling uphill because Republicans have it in their mind that because Trump has an R by his name, that he's going to protect them. And nothing could be further from the truth. We got to stop believing that any political party is going to stop the assault on our liberties collectively, all of them, but specifically the Second Amendment as it relates to the topic of our channels. I
agree. Don't be a defeatist, man. We run this country. At some point, our states gave over lots of rights to the federal government, and the individuals started to be told what they were going to do and what they weren't going to do. We can take control and put the right representatives in that actually represent us, and then tell them how to vote. You have a say in your own governance. This experiment is so you can have a say. And so, have a say, not just a social media post. One day we're posting about how I feel about the socioeconomics related to the immigration issues in America today. And then the next day I'm dropping some constitutional law stuff or whatever. We're all experts in everything. We need to be telling those things that how we believe and how we want our representatives to vote, how they should be acting, how they should do it. They work for us, man. They should be doing what we tell them to do, and we can take that back. I mean, I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about by the way it's supposed to be, the way our government was designed, to bring grievances before the government, to talk to them, to tell them how to vote for them, to put the right person that represents you in there. So being a defeatist and saying, it was nice while it lasted. I don't own guns to play games. I don't own guns to go out and take pictures and put them on Instagram, and that's not what I own guns for. I believe that every time somebody comes to one of my training classes, that my country just became a little bit more well regulated. We just got a little bit safer from everything from terrorism to tyranny. There's one more ambassador out there for the Second Amendment that's holding other members to our community to a higher standard of safety and gun ownership. There's one more person out there that if they're eating at the same restaurant with me, and somebody comes in there, because people do this. It's happening. We're just talking about active shooters right now. You cannot explain why. They'll come in and they'll shoot up people. They will stab them. They'll do violence for whatever reason that us normal people can't understand. The line of defense is the immediate responders, the people right there carrying the gun with training, knowing what they're doing and being safe, training that our community imposed on each other, not some government entity said they had to have.
Yeah, that's one thing I want to talk about. So first of all, just super chat. Somebody asked an interesting question. Big fan of the show. Have you stopped a robbery or anyone wanted to commit an act of violence against you? Well, yeah, people have wanted to commit acts of violence against me. I get threats every once in a while from various people that threaten me or my family with regards to stopping a robbery. Many years ago, I may have told this story before. A friend of mine, Brett, worked at a quick shop in Kansas, and it was 2:00 in the morning. And a guy came in the dead of summer wearing a trench coat, and it's 100 degrees outside. He paced around at the back of the store. I was there visiting my buddy who was working. He's pacing around at the back of the store. Once the last customer left, he started to walk towards it. Well, Brett and I were talking. Brett had a handgun as well against store policy. He had put it underneath a newspaper that was laying on the counter because he was nervous about this guy. I walked out to my truck, which was parked right by the front door. Last customer left. He walked to my friend Brett at the counter, opened up his coat, grabbed a 1911 pistol and started to pull it out. And Brett stared him right in the eye, and then Brett looked out the window at me. And at that point, I was getting out of the truck. I had a Beretta 9mm. He saw that I had a handgun. He immediately closed his jacket and walked straight out of the store and disappeared into the darkness. That was the closest I ever came to being involved in a robbery. And thank God shots weren't exchanged. He got the right idea. And made the appropriate decision. But again, it goes back to what you had mentioned earlier. Guns save lives more than they are misused in this country. There was a perfect example right there. We didn't even call the police. Called a friend of mine that was on the police force, and he's like, "Yeah, man, you're good. You're justified there." At the time, Kansas didn't have concealed carry, and it certainly wasn't. A constitutional carry state. And all that's changed since I left, and this has been 25 years ago or more when all that transpired.
I'm in Kansas right now.
Are you? What are you doing in Kansas? Training?
I'm in Wichita. No, I moved here in December,
Oh, that's
and
right.
I'll be here for a few more months. Yeah,
Okay, that's right.
I got an AK class this weekend. You should come down
I'd love to, man. My
next weekend.
my family lives in the Lawrence area. I'm not going to give the exact town because the
Oh,
last thing I need is the lunatics threatening my family. My
what's your
mom's too old to
address?
deal with that crap.
Yeah, no,
But let's see. Milcert Mike, great channel by the way. There's a lot of great channels on here, guys, that are posting. But Milcert Mike, let's see. GOP was trying to get elected. Now Trump has seen his base support him no matter how much he has fudded out. This is the most dangerous time. Yeah, I think to a degree, I still see the wild Trump support, despite the fact that he starts to wander off into these anti-gun areas. And we'll see what he says on Monday, and we'll see how that affects his support. But I think Trump needs to be mindful of the fact that gun owners many times are the deciding factor in national elections. And if he loses sight of that and gun owners turn on him, I mean, the alternative is what? We get, an Elizabeth Warren or something like that. I mean, that would be worse in my opinion. Again, here we are stuck with the binary choice of, bad or worse. Yeah, I don't know what to say in that regard. Let's see. With Trump and the Republican support now, harsh gun control is inevitable next election. Solving things peacefully is key, but what happens when armed conflict becomes the only way to protect the Second Amendment? Well, guys, when that happens, we'll know. And, we'll, what happened here? Don't want that popping up. I'm not going to speculate on when and where something like that might have to take place. We kind of talked about that earlier in the stream.
we need to avoid it at all costs.
I agree. Civil war is something we need to avoid at all costs, so that's why we need to get out and contact your representatives. If we need to start mobilizing and getting out and having rallies at every single state house or state capitol in the country, then that's what we're going to do. But you guys have to, be motivated. It's something that, again, goes back to when a Republican's in office. It's awfully hard to get Republicans out to fight for things like our Second Amendment rights, because they just automatically assume that the Republican in office is going to protect us, and that's how we wind up with things like the '89 ban and the '86 machine gun ban. All Republicans did that to us.
Yep.
You
we
guys
let our
get
guard
on MSN
down,
and
man.
defend the 2A and the Lion's Den. The mainstream media doesn't want anything to do with this. They won't bring us on. Let's see. Minimum braces go the way the bump stocks did. I mean, that's probably, if this guy was using a brace, and no politician's going to want to go out there and defend braces, just like they didn't want to go out there and defend bump stocks. And the reality is we shouldn't even have an NFA. Braces and bump stocks shouldn't be a thing, because we should be able to own the machine guns, because that is what the Second Amendment is about. It isn't about hunting rifles. It isn't about, like what Daniel was saying, modern sporting rifles. Sporting has nothing to do with the Second Amendment. It wasn't even a concern of the founding fathers. That was the last thing on their mind.
From the gear, the weapons choice, and the magazines. The other guy had an AK in Texas, and then we had an AR with a 100-round drum. You already know what's coming, right? Again, and I'm not a fan of fear mongering, and I'm not here on this show trying to promote like what I do at a place that sells magazines. But we know what they're coming after. Bumps, or the stocks and the shorter barrel guns are going to be something they're going to probably go after. Like, we're going to see that in the narrative somewhere.
They're going to go after the low-hanging fruit. So
we're going to see the magazine capacity thing again.
You're going to see them talking about a magazine ban. You're going to see them talking about a brace ban. And that's just the reality of it. My friend Aaron told me, he's like, dude, every month I buy 4 or 5 30-round Lancer mags and PMags, and he was trying to buy some just today, and everybody was sold out. I think he was on your site, and the only thing that you guys had were Lancers. I think he was out looking for PMags. But the race is on. But guys, don't just go out there and panic buy. Forget about that for a moment. Get politically active.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, sure, if you're short on magazines, and boy, nothing makes me more angry than people that go out there and try to profit from these things, where they'll go out and buy stuff low and try to sell it on Gun Broker High, or the people like Cheaper Than Dirt that already have a large inventory of magazines they paid $3 for a piece, but they're going to go out there and charge $100 for them the day after national tragedy. People like that and companies like that disgust me, and that's why you never see me talk about cheaper than dirt other than to bust their chops. But yeah, don't just go out and panic buy, guys. Go out and get in the political fight, because that's what we need. Because the reality is, look what happened with bump stocks. The grandfather clause didn't even occur. There was no grandfathering. They just took our property and made us destroy our property with no compensation. They just made it go away. Nothing was grandfathered. And
the precedents there can be followed again.
Yep. Looking forward, these anti-gunners are going to go for complete bans and turn-ins. They're not going to go with grandfathering. They've already moved away from that. So I just wanted to get in here. Jim Nugent, one of our a Patreon for a long time and a great supporter of the channel. Jim, thank you so much, brother. Unfortunately, it's easier to demonize guns than it is to deal with some of these much more difficult cultural and mental issues. Absolutely right. We were talking about that. We need to stand up and protect our rights. Time for rallying together is now. Thanks for doing this chat tonight. Absolutely, man. I think this is one thing I brought up, is that maybe we need, and I brought up, maybe we march on Washington. And we make, we fill the National Mall with gun owners. And somebody actually posted, I think maybe on one of my Instagram posts, well, what has a march ever accomplished? As if, being politically active. I'm like, maybe you missed women's suffrage in history class, or maybe you missed the whole civil rights movement.
Right.
When we march, it makes a difference. And even though CNN and MSNBC won't want to cover the National Mall full of American gun owners, they're going to have no choice. So yes, we can do things like that, and it does make a difference. Any thoughts on that, Daniel? I'm looking for some super chats here, man.
No, while you're looking at that, I had something that came up a minute ago, but you were in the middle of one of your good rants, so I wasn't gonna mess you up, man. If it was a bad one, I'd have cut you off and saved you, but you had a good one going. There are some things that we can do, right? We're focusing on the Second Amendment, which. I care about what happens in the moment in my life, but I worry about my kids, right? I need to make sure that they are also safe. And I probably 100% believe that the Second Amendment makes my country safer. And I need to maintain that for them, right? I might die tomorrow. I might have a few more years. I might get 20, 30 more. Who knows, right? But I need to make sure that I'm doing what I can for the future, because that's important. But I care a lot about the lives that are lost right here, man. These are real things. Like 20 people dead in Texas, 9 dead in Ohio. This is not something to skim over. Like I said earlier on in the show, I've looked into and done hours and hours and days and weeks of research on these active shooters, read autopsies, talked to officers who responded, fire and EMS who responded. So much time and effort in this. I got way too close to one once. I went to a little boy's funeral and a memorial service in the town, and I cried for freaking 3 days straight. Was broke off, and I had to back away a little bit for a year or two, just from looking into these active shooter things a whole lot. But there's a lot of things that can be done. One, I don't know how much the armed citizen could have done against the Ohio shooter in this event. In 24 seconds, officers downed him. Probably a little bit more effective against the one in Texas. But I do know one thing that we see a vast majority of deaths occurring because of exsanguination, because they're bleeding out. It's what I'm seeing in these active shooter events. The American College of Surgeons that presented the Hartford Consensus, and the Department of Homeland Security's document, they define on-scene responders as those people who are not fire, EMS, law enforcement. They're the people right there when a mass casualty incident occurs. And they said the thing that's going to save the most lives is going to be those on-scene responders taking action. And if it's a fight time, it's a fight time. But in the immediate aftermath, it's keeping blood in bodies. It's slapping the chest. It's slapping the chest seal on the box. It's packing the junctions. It's throwing a tourniquet on the extremities. It's simple stuff that you can learn and to fumble your way through in 20 minutes and have a kid on you, and we can save lives. Most of us out there watching it are going to encounter a medical incident at some point in our life. Chances are, there's a high probability of that, some level of a medical incident. Have some training and have some medical capabilities. I fight hard for public access bleeding kits in schools. Part of a program called Jacob Kit, named after a little boy who died in Townville that I got a little too close to. Put a bit of time and effort into that, and we've got them in a lot of schools all over the country and doing a lot of good. and that little boy's going to save lives, by losing his life, unfortunately. But the medical piece of this, the training piece of this, the carrying your gun and not being unarmed, these are all lessons we should finally be learning from these things.
Absolutely. And this is one thing that I wanted to bring up earlier and I got sidetracked was, where in all these tragedies, where are the armed citizens? Now, some guys have said that, they're doing what they should, and, they're getting their family and immediate friends out of the danger zone. They're not going in to actively engage. They're just doing whatever they can to safely get themselves and their loved ones or friends out of the line of fire, which very well may be this scenario. But, we have a lot of concealed carry going on, but you would think that there would be somebody that would be right there with the killer right in front of them where you have no choice but to engage. It's not a matter of gunfire down the hallway 150 yards away and you're going to go the other way. I absolutely agree with that. But what happens, where are the gun owners and the carriers when that person starts shooting right there and you're faced with them? And, where are they? Just seems that it's so weird. Maybe we just don't have enough people out there that are carrying, and like you said, not only just carry a firearm, get training with it, but also the medical side of it. We saw in one of the Instagram posts that one of the guys I follow had posted, I forget who it was, or I give them credit, but I think it was Mr. Guns and Gear, posted a still from a video where the people from the shooting in Texas had basically plugged a chest wound with whatever they had to help that person survive until they could get proper medical care. And I believe that person survived, or at least made it to the hospital. And that goes to what you're saying. Many times you'll be in the area of something like this happening, and before first responders can get there, you are the first responder. I fully believe in that. That's why I carry a firearm, because I am a first responder. We all should have that mindset. But you may have to apply, medical treatment to folks. So you should get at least basic training in that application. And yes, we live in a litigious society where, if you try to help somebody and save their life and something goes wrong, they come back and sue you afterwards. You know what? I'll deal with that later. At that point, I'm just concerned with saving a life. And if I get sued for, doing something good, so be it. Start a GoFundMe and hopefully people will help defend against something like that. But if you're, at least you have to try to help your fellow American, your fellow citizen, your fellow man in the time of need. And you can do that by being armed, carrying a medical kit, which I'll be the first to admit I do not carry one. Have one in the Jeep. Always have a medical kit in the Jeep because I do things like cut the end of my finger off with Barrett's. But in that case, it was the Warrior Poet that patched me up. It wasn't my medical kit, and he does actually carry a medical kit on him. It seems like one of the popular things right now to do are these medical kits that, because it's kind of hard to carry it on your body where it's discreet, and a lot of guys are going to the ankle kits, and he has one, and he had it on him when, I basically ripped the end of my finger off, and boom, within 20 seconds, he had stopped the bleeding and got me patched up, and then, if it was a more severe wound, it would have been good for him to have been there. The reality is I wasn't going to die from my finger getting hurt. But a more serious wound, having a tourniquet and knowing how to use it, or how to deal with a sucking chest wound and things like that, man, that could be invaluable. And it's not just from an active shooter situation. How many times have you been driving down the road and
dude, it's your kid sticking their arm through a windshield or a window or something in the house. Like, this is everything. This is like it may not be gun related at all. I've got a video coming out on the Gun Mag Warehouse YouTube channel. We filmed it a couple weeks ago. It'll be up sometime soon about what you need in your medical kit on the range. Like, when I see somebody shooting on a public range by themselves, like especially an outdoor range that's kind of secluded, and they don't have a medical kit like out there ready to grab right away with people around them they don't know, I'm like, I think that's crazy, right? To me, that's insane. Like, every class, I've got one on me and I've got one on the ground, like right near where we're working. Everything else, I also have a very well-explained emergency plan where everybody has jobs in case somebody has a heart attack, chokes on something during lunch, or somebody accidentally shoots himself reholstering their gun. Like, we have a plan in place. Like, I take this incredibly serious. and the whole package of a life of safety. Now, I'm guilty sometimes of walking into places not having a medical kit on me. I've got a couple of small ones that are wallet size that have pretty much everything that you may need on a small wound, like one gunshot wound, minus the tourniquet. It's got a tourniquet in it, but a crappy tourniquet. I am not going to name what I consider a crappy tourniquet. I'm not going to open that can of worms whatsoever. But if it's not a SWAT TW or CAT, probably not great. There's a few other good options, and I'm not going to go into detail. We won't even do it. But there are some things that work that'll get you through in a pinch if you need it. But long story short, it's not that hard. It's not that big of a lifestyle change. There's guys that take picture of their EDC dumps, and they've got like so much garbage that they carry. I'm like,
yeah.
but you're missing a medikit. Kerry Davis from Dark Angel Medical, which is a place that Kerry's a good friend of mine, a great trainer. He does a great job, and he's got a lot of great products. He saved a lot of lives with what he does, a lot of lives. And Kerry. He's a former Air Force medic, all around solid dude. But he got he's got a lot of different kits. He's got that ankle kit and all that stuff too. But he has a little hashtag that he uses. It's like, I forget exactly what he says. He's like missing the medical, or hashtag missing, or something like EDC but no medical, like not really prepared or something. I can't remember what it is.
Well, you know what's funny? Everybody in our community is drawn towards the firearms side of it, right? That's what we're interested in. Let's face it, we love firearms. We enjoy shooting them. We enjoy training and all that goes along with it.
See, I love life, man.
But right. But medical,
life. I love people that don't know his life.
Medical is just as important. It's just that it's not as cool to everybody. I mean, there's some people like Skinny Medic and guys that have channels dedicated to,
He's a good dude.
He is a good dude. That make videos that talk about, everyday carry of medical kits and stuff like that, and blowout kits. And but it's just not as cool to every gun owner to also be into medical kits. But we need to make it cool, right? And myself included. Now, like I said, I always have a first aid kit in the Jeep because we work around dangerous things. I mean, I've had 2 firearms literally blow up in my face. And thankfully, I didn't need medical attention. I was spared even so much as a splinter. That'll wake you up, though. But the fact is we deal with dangerous things. And, anytime you have, explosions going off right next to your head, there's the chance you're going to get hurt. So that's why I have a medical kit in the Jeep. But when I'm out traveling, things like that, now I do have one in my get home bag, but just walking through the mall, no medical kit, and I'm just as guilty as the next guy of not having one.
When I fly, I've always got one in the backpack. It's going through security, I've got needle decompressions, I've got scalpel in there, I've got like small scalpel. It's got trauma shears. All that stuff gets through the thing. It's all medical, and it's all good.
Half that stuff I don't even know how to use. Like, I wouldn't know how to trach somebody. I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't trach anybody. The most advanced thing that I would do to somebody is a nasal airway. That's the most advanced thing that I would do to somebody. But the likelihood of somebody else around there who didn't bring what they needed, but that doctor knows how to do a needle decompression. But chances are, with the hypopneumothorax, the chances of you needing a needle decompression in the United States, in the continent, in CONUS, is pretty slim because of the time from incident, injury, mechanical injury, whatever, to transportation to a higher level of care. Chances of that is very slim. But in an aircraft situation, it's possible, right? Like if you can't get down, or more likely than being on the ground 20 minutes from the nearest level 4 trauma center.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine, though,
I would do it.
There are a lot of registered nurses out there. There's a lot of nurses out there, and there's certainly a lot of doctors out there. And I would imagine just about every public area would have somebody there that can do the more advanced medical procedures, but just basic, blowout kit, being able to apply a tourniquet, being able to stop the bleeding, and wait until emergency personnel get there. Is a necessity. And that stuff you can stick into a cargo pocket or into a back pocket for the most part.
Yep.
All right, so we've been on the air now for an hour and a half. I think, guys, we've pretty much talked about what we had to say with regards to the national tragedies that have transpired in the last couple of days. The reality is we're going into the 2020 election cycle, and we're going to have to be politically active. It's going to take more than just watching videos and making Instagram posts on all accounts. I mean, that's what I do pretty much for a living. Well, not pretty much. That's what I do for a living, but also getting out and being politically active. I write those letters. I make those phone calls, just like everybody else should be, and we're going to have to do that. And it may come down to we're going to ask everybody to show up at their state capitals and show up in force to say, no, you will not take our guns. You will not take one more inch of our liberty. That is not the problem. The problem is bigger than that, and you're trying to put a Band-Aid on a gaping chest wound. It's not the fact that we have firearms. Firearms, statistically speaking, are not even involved in deaths in the United States more so than, I think, as the FBI statistics say, that you're more likely to die by somebody using their hands and feet than by rifle fire in the United States. And that still holds true today. So you're more likely to get into a fisticuff at a bar and die by getting your butt beat than you are by somebody using a rifle to kill you. But yet our politicians are going to be out there from this day forward going into the 2020 election cycle saying, what we need to do is ban guns. We need to pass these red flag laws, which we don't. We don't need to take anything away from anybody because firearms clearly aren't the problem. There's a bigger problem that needs to be addressed, and we need to hold them accountable, and we need to be politically active, and we're going to have to go out there. And even if you voted for Trump and support Trump, you're still going to have to protest and let him know where you stand.
Yep.
And what do you have to say, man? We're going to wind things up here.
Man, I'll give you a final thought. Like, if these two tragedies and the ones before them haven't taught us anything by now, we're brain dead. Like, we should be realizing that we have got to take responsibility for our own personal safety. Like, we have to do it. Like,
Yep.
on-scene responders, the lives of our families that we're out walking around within the mall where we are, they are relying on us to have the skills and the knowledge necessary to keep them alive if something like this were to happen. So get training, put in the work, have the tools that you need to do it, learn how to use them and all those things. We got this coming fight that's coming that we know is coming. And we also need to accept the responsibility for our own personal, our defense of the Second Amendment. Like, we have to do it. Nobody else is going to do it for us. Like, if you're sitting there watching this and you're like, yeah, I'll think about it. Like, I'm probably not going to send anybody a letter. Like, well, I forget the whole ethical theory, but when everybody does the same action, is it okay? Like, this, it's almost unethical to not do it. Basically, what I'm getting at. We can't have everybody thinking that same way, because I don't care what you think. I don't care what anybody believes. The Second Amendment can go away in this country. Like, it's a right, shall not be infringed. And when enough people want this to go away, and enough people are not stopping it, like, we can have a serious problem on our hands. We have to stop that right now. Diplomatically, we have to stop that by putting the right people in office and telling them how we feel. Like, you are representing me, so go represent me. You do that tactfully. Like, that's how we fight right now, and be ready to fight the other way to defend your life and your family in one of these tragedies if it happens.
Yep.
But we got a fight coming, and we should be ready for it.
Carry every day, get training, and be part of the solution, guys. That's what we can recommend. Daniel, how can folks find you out there if they're looking for more information? I know that you have the Gun Mag Warehouse blog. You also have a YouTube channel. Tell folks how they can find you.
Yeah, Gun Mag Warehouse on YouTube. Would love for you guys to come subscribe. That'd be awesome. We're putting a lot of time and effort and a lot of videos coming out on that. My own company that I've been doing for years is Shaw Strategies. It's shawstrategies.com. I've got to add some new classes to the schedule because I kind of let this year run out. I'll add some classes to the rest of this year and then next year on the schedule. I stopped traveling around teaching as much as I used to, just going all the time. Kind of wore me out, so I slowed down a little bit on that. But I put I'm doing a lot of stuff with Gun Mag Warehouse all the time, running their marketing. So tons of YouTube content out there with information. We got stuff coming up on how to shoot guns better. A lot of good information that people could really use that could make us better as a community. And I hope people go check that out. You are about to start being on my podcast fairly regularly at gunpodcast.com. I took a little break from doing that podcast, but I did it for many years. If I do another episode, I might be able to say that I'm the oldest gun podcast out there. I'm pretty close if I'm not. So I'm looking forward to having you on the show and us semi-regularly out there putting out some good information, having talks kind of like this. Hopefully some better discussions on some more fun topics so we can laugh and goof off and not be so serious the whole time.
Man. Having to be serious all the time really kind of sucks, but you know what?
Rough,
we have to be active right now. We're heading to a very dangerous time. We're heading into election, and with these recent events, I mean, the reality is we have to use our platforms to inform people and try to motivate people to be politically active, and that's what we're trying to do right now. Also, Daniel does have a Patreon page, so consider swinging by, checking him out over there. Of course, we are supported by our viewers over on Patreon, so there will be a link in the description down below if you'd like to support us. And also swing by, check out Copper Custom. And I may have to try to do some Twitch gaming to unwind here either tonight or tomorrow night. So we are.
If you were on
Twitch gamers
PC,
as well.
dude, we'd get busy. But you play on that weird thing, that console thing. Like, we got to get you a PC. I'll send you one.
I can't do the PC, man. I constantly have to buy a new machine every year just to stay relevant. And I kind of like the fact that I can, play a game and have a machine that's good for 5 years, and I don't have to keep dumping money into a PC so I can buy the latest and greatest game.
Or bad for 5 years, but acceptable, depending on your perspective.
All right, guys. Hey, we greatly appreciate you, coming out watching the video tonight. Thank you for all the super chats and the support. It means a lot to us. It's greatly appreciated. Please stay vigilant and be politically active, guys. If we get any more information, we'll do another live stream and try to get that information out to you guys. Tthanks for 11 years of support, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Well, thanks, guys. See ya.